Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our session today. I am Kenneth Barrientos. I work at UNESCO Univoc, and I am currently leading our work on SDGs and Greening Tibet. UNESCO Univoc is one of the conference coalition partners of the WorldSkills International, and we coordinate a network of Tibet organizations in UNESCO member states. So we are very grateful to WorldSkills International for providing this platform to share the experiences of some of our network members in the region. I will be co-moderating today's session with my colleague, Mr. Robert Perua, Program Specialist in our UNESCO Beijing Cluster Office. This session is part of the Skills for Green Jobs track. And for those of you wondering, this track aimed at reviewing what has been achieved in greening of Tibet systems and institutions, and to see how the pandemic has impacted this movement. Next slide, please. Today's session will explore the job-rich opportunities in the green transition. We have very interesting initiatives that are taken in the region to seize these opportunities of implementing climate change solutions that are ecologically sound, economically viable, and also inclusive for the society using Tibet mechanisms. We designed this showcase discussion with contributions from our expert panelists today, consistent with our aims to drive a holistic implementation of education for sustainable development and greening Tibet agenda, and also to mobilize greater engagement of Tibet with partners in curating demand-driven and green-oriented programs, policies, and approaches. I think these agendas are common and complementary with our organizing partners for this session, which are UNIDO and WorldSkills International. So before we proceed, I just want to share three housekeeping information. First, the Q&A function is activated for participants to ask questions at any point in time. You can find this tool at the bottom of your Zoom panel. Interpretation is also available if you want to switch between English and Chinese. The complete profiles of our experts can be found on the session page of the WorldSkills conference. To manage our time, we will not introduce our well-accomplished experts in great lengths, but you can find all the information on the session page. Third, the panel will run for 1 hour and 15 minutes, so let us try to adhere to the time allocations for all the speakers. I will now pass on the floor to my colleague Robert for more information about our session.
Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you, participants. Thank you, panelists. Our panelists are Ricardo Savogliano from UNIDO, Janaka Jayalath, Brian Butanes, Martin Stotele, and Adrian Ang. It is a distinct pleasure to introduce to you what we have in store for you today, ladies and gentlemen. UNESCO, Beijing office, and Univoc Center are very pleased to be partner to WorldSkills and UNIDO in hosting this session today. We're indeed very proud, very happy to partner and engage in the WorldSkills Conference 2021 under the theme Road Ahead, Skills for a Resilient Future. I'm pleased to introduce to you what we have in store for you today. For the first segment, we have a very interesting showcase to be presented by the Chief of Agro Industries and Skills Development Division of UNIDO. Ricardo will share with us some very interesting models and projects and approaches that UNIDO is doing and with industry partners in the region. We will see how they have adopted working in alignment with the frameworks and platforms to ensure environmental sustainability, green skills, industrial development in some of the Asian countries, and also aligned with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with specific focus on SDG 4, quality education, SDG 8, and SD 13 on climate action. We will also learn how these projects, UNIDO projects, have shaped and contributed to skills demand and green economy. Ricardo's input will be followed by 3 experts who are responsible for the design and implementation of initiatives meant to respond to different types of emerging or developing green skills demand. We have very interesting examples of skills and development and industry engagement and approaches in TVET to prepare the workforce for green transition and green economy. In Singapore, from Sri Lanka and Indonesia. Towards the end of our session today, ladies and gentlemen, we will hear from a TVET center or institution in the Philippines to reflect and share upon how training, sustainability, and partnerships are organized with communities during the pandemic. Without further ado, I now invite Ricardo Savigliano to make his presentation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Robert, and thank you, UNESCO, for the excellent cooperation over the last few weeks, and thank you for WorldSkills International for having invited us to actually to cooperate together. That was has been a very interesting journey so far. So I see that the slides, or maybe if you can help me with, because we prepared some slides that we would like to propose. Anyway, before doing into the slides, I would like just to say that UNIDO, as a specialized agency of the United Nations for the industrial development, is a kind of custodian also of the SDG 9, which is with calls of on sustainable industrial development, inclusive and sustainable industrial development. So in that position, we have the unique advantage, let's say, to work very closely with the private sector, which is actually our driver for thinking, for innovate, also in the area of skills development. So we have many projects, many approaches which are trying to get inspiration from the private sector in what we normally know as a oriented demand skills development. So today we opted to showcase 2 examples of cooperation with the private sector, just to highlight the way, as I said, we stimulate and we get support from the private sector in terms of skills development program. We hope that these 2 cases will give you some good elements for discussion. So the first one is related to a partnership with a leading, let's say, global manufacturer of air conditioning appliances, and the name is Midea, is based in China, and I would like on that regard to launch a video. If you can please move the presentation 1 slide more, should be a video for you. Thank you.
Manufacturer to partner with UNIDO and transition from using greenhouse gases to a natural refrigerant such as R290 with negligible global warming potential. but this process is not as simple as it sounds. Propping is a flammable substances that require qualified technicians to be able to safely install, service, and maintain these air conditioners. We are now ready to bring environmentally friendly ACs to the global market. But if we want to increase the update worldwide, we need to have trained engineers and technicians at local and global level and invest in the reskilling and upskilling.
So, thank you so much. So basically, the first case is related to the Montreal Protocol. I don't know whether you are familiar with that. The Montreal Protocol is a treaty which aims at protecting the ozone layer. So here we talk about something that comes from the 70s and then got many steps until today, and many successes and many still challenges ahead of us. So the Montreal Protocol, it must be, let's say, highlighted, was based in the 70s on the precautionary principle. So when the environmental issue was identified, the causes were also identified, and actions were taken with a principle of engaging at global level with that precautionary principle. So, and then another very important element is that the Montreal Protocol and the Vienna Convention before is based on shared but differentiated responsibilities. So those elements and also the successes brought the Montreal Protocol and the Vienna Convention to be the first environmental treaty to reach the universal ratification. So every country in the world decided to engage into that treaty. And UNIDO is part of that. We are working with governments, with private sectors and industries to phase out those substances which are depleting the ozone layer. Most recently, in 2016, the Montreal Protocol was also, let's say, tasked to reduce the emission of some chemicals which are not affecting the ozone layer, but affecting the climate primarily. So the Montreal Protocol has, with the Kigali Amendment, was tasked to reduce the use of HFCs. I mean, for those with technical knowledge, I mean, it's easy to understand the message, but again, the video was calling about a revolution, and this is actually what is happening. It's happening at the level of Montreal Protocol, but the companies. Next slide, please. And that revolution is, as I said, being inspired by the private sector. So since 10 years, UNIDO is working, in this case, this specific case, with Midea. Midea is really a huge player in the global market of air conditioning systems, in particular those small ones. I mean, the one that we saw, the one with the unit outside our windows. And by implementing this technology that's been developed, the video showed that we can achieve the 0.3 degrees centigrade, which is I mean, very actual debate, no? In the Glasgow meeting, it's a huge impact. So the saving that has been calculated is 9 trillion tons of CO2 equivalent. So it's equivalent to a car driving from Neptune to the sun. So we are talking really about huge magnitudes. But that technology, that specific technology, has shortcomings, has some difficulties, some barriers. One of them is flammability, making the installation, making the maintenance of those units a little bit more tricky. And for that, we are not talking about impossible things to do, but for that we need to train people. We need to have people skilled to handle that technology. Next slide, please. So UNIDO and Midea worked in the past to make sure that at the level of the manufacturing, that flammable substance can be handled properly. I mean, that's not a big issue because industries are handling even much more difficult substances. So on the manufacturing line, that is not an issue. But again, those eco-friendly technologies, though are very high efficient, need, as I said, trained technicians to handle it. And let me say, in China, Midea has done a tremendous work together with the government to train the people. But there was a recent study done by the European Association of Refrigeration, this area, where they are saying that only between 3 and 5 and 7% of the current European technicians handling air conditioning units are able to handle flammable refrigerants. That means that in Europe, there is a tremendous need for reskill and upskills of those technicians to reach out a level where the market could take the technology. So the AREA is calling for mandatory certification, for instance, because I mean, could be dangerous for the technicians itself, could be dangerous for end users. If the technician, let's say, if the technology is not properly handled. And again, let me say here we are talking about a revolution that could help the international community to reduce by 0.3 degrees Celsius centigrade the rates of global warming. So again, it's something that has a huge magnitude in terms of impact. So next slide, please. Let me refer to another example where, again, UNIDO and the private sector are very much working together. It's the case of the eco-industrial park. So eco-industrial parks are to be considered as agglomeration of companies producing goods and services, and that agglomeration is done in an organic and synergic manner. So those companies are sharing locations, infrastructures, and also utilities and services. So that's in front of you, you have a diagram where you can see a bit an explanation on that approach. Next slide, please. So to become an eco-industrial park, an industrial park has to demonstrate higher standards on environmental and social responsibilities. And the concept of eco-industrial park is based on resource efficiency, right? And reuse of waste, but including energy and also materials. So the approach calls for a continuous improvements of partners and companies towards efficiency and reduction of risks, both on humans and environment.
Ricardo,
so yes, please.
You have one minute to wrap up, please.
Yeah. I'm going into the case of Indonesia. If you want to move it forward, please. Next slide. Is the case of Indonesia, where basically the eco-industrial park has a TVET center located inside the facility. When I was talking about the importance of sharing services, in this case, we have a vet school within the park. So it's a park with 330 companies, and there is a school training students and making them with the proper skills to approach the industries. If you go to the next slide, just to give you the final flavor, this is the last slide of mine. 80% of graduated from the school are, let's say, are employed by those companies. And partners are very well known locally, but also internationally. So we have cases of entrepreneurship support, but apprenticeship programs also abroad in Germany, in Japan, and so on and so forth. So just to say, to conclude my presentation, I would like to highlight three trends. New occupations and related qualifications are needs, basically skill, let's say, profiles to enter, let's say, new economies, so the greener economies. There is a need to reintegrate workers in those declining sectors. Again, greening is an opportunity, definitely an opportunity to create jobs. And the important is that private sector is in the picture fully since the beginning of that process.
Thank you.
Robert, with that, I turn it back to you, and I thank you for the chance to talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ricardo, for your excellent presentation of the two examples of UNIDO's work in China and in Indonesia. I will pose you only two questions for you to answer. So the first question: how is the protocol of these projects influencing decisions or influencing policy to adopt different shades of greenness in terms of jobs and tasks in the sectors addressed by the project? The second question is, how do you observe trends in the level or profile of TVET skills that are in demand in jobs when new green technologies are introduced? You have the floor, please, Ricardo.
Thank you, Robert. Both cases are actually have been proposed because they have a very high, let's say, impact on policies. No, I was mentioning both the Montreal Protocol, but also the eco-industrial parks are cases where governments are very, let's say, let me say, in the driving seat, right? They are the ones moving let's say the line of development. For Montreal Protocol, there is not a specific need, a specific focus on job creation. There is the focus is on environmental protection. So you don't have on that treaty a very specific focus on jobs. But all the Montreal Protocol projects are relying on TVET schools, and then maybe, I'm sure that we have several of the participants today or the audience from the schools where curricula on air conditioning and refrigerations are part of the services they provide. What I'm saying is that even those CVs, curricula should look into the future of technologies, the technologies which are now or developed since 10 years and going to be in the market in the next 5 or 10 years. That is going to be very important because technicians trained today will find a job with technologies which are going to be different in 5 years from now. So, and that brings me to the second point, how the TVET system should consider those technologies. And the development of those technologies. It's really important, I think, that every single VET's schools, through their governments, of course, keep an eye on those mega trends happening globally in terms of technology development. We are not only talking about green jobs, we are talking about also digital jobs. We know the tremendous numbers telling us how different the job market will look like, in terms of in few years from now because of digitalization. So TVET systems should be absolutely linked with those mega trends. And who can do that? of course, UNESCO, but also partnering with UNIDO, partnering with, it must be a table embracing many different, let's say, actors. In our opinion, as a UNIDO, the industry, in particular those industries investing in future technologies, must be there to inspire us. I'm not sure, Robert, whether I answered. I hope so. Otherwise, I would be more than happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you very much. I now pass the floor on to Ken for the next segment, please.
Thank you, Robert and Ricardo, for that wonderful part that you have organized. So we will now move on to the second part of the discussion, and this is about the showcase of TVET systems and institutions in the region. So how they are responding to these demands, new megatrends, and technological revolutions. I invite Dr. Janaka Jayalat, who will start off the presentation. He is the Deputy Director General of the Technical and Vocational Education Commission in Sri Lanka. And before that, he has been engaged as Director of Information Systems for many years. Janaka, so you have 5 minutes for this. We will manage the Q&A right after. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken, and thank you, Robert. And thank you for giving me this opportunity, the WorldSkills and UNESCO UNIVOC. And my presentation is in 2 parts. First part is the policy review and how to modeling the stakeholder engagement in TVET. And the second part, I'm going to give 2 examples from construction and energy sector, how we applied greening elements in the curriculums. These are the 2 things that we have been practicing in our sector. Next slide, please. So give you some brief introduction. Actually, you know, the Asian cultures inherit the greening concepts because most of the Asian cultures are with the environment, and they know how to save the environment, and they think that this is an asset, and most of the rural sector covers like 70% of mostly the agriculture, which is largely involved with the greening concepts from the tradition. And actually, greening TVET helps environment, and we are very conscious about these practices. And urban population has been a reason for damaging some of the environment, and there are a lot of litigations and various regulations in regulating these environmental hazards and various things. And also there's a motivation from various export-oriented companies as their corporate social responsibility to save the nature. And there's a new concept called greening workforce. This because earlier people thought that greening concepts are more costly, and now people get realize that greening is more less costly and more profitable and more productive. And this has changed the people's mindset towards the implementing the greening. In Sri Lanka also, we are trying to seize the opportunities for job creation and skills development in green sectors like PV, photovoltaic, and waste disposal, and various other aspects. And we try to give more opportunities for the disadvantaged groups through the greening skills, and a lot of opportunities have been created through that. And also the small and medium scale industries create some of the issues, and we try to give separate skills development and greening element the trainer training and various other programs under different ministries to reduce that. And when we go to the policy level, we have greening Tibet policy and labor market forecasting and Tibet planning, which is the planning tool which we are going to implement the development plan. Next slide, please. And if we take the coverage, mainly there are individuals who are in the business and SME sector, and some of the government corporates, government and corporate businesses who are in the greening sector. Next slide, please. When we consider the ecosystem of greening Tibet, we have green NCS, greening NCS, and greening curriculums. We have various curriculum elements, and there's activity delivery organizations, greening practices in the workplaces, and green workforce when they go to the jobs and markets, and thereby improve the productivity. And all this leads to sustainable development. Next slide, please. These are the two examples where the greening elements covered in the energy sector, where most of the exposed gas are controlled and regulated in different occupations like boiler operator, electric motor winder, electrician, and linesman, various other jobs which has environmental concerns, disposal management, energy conservation, like this. Next slide, please. This is some of other occupation, rep and air conditioning mechanic, which has various aspects for greening and how to control the ozone layer, how to protect the environment, and various other aspects in greening concepts. Next slide, please. This is the second sector, construction sector, which is very much involved in greening methods and practices, aluminium fabricator, quantity survey, construction draftman, how to do the environment protection and various other regulations in the sector. Next slide, please. This is the last slide. This is some of the other construction related occupations, construction site supervisor, wood craftsman, barbender, all these there are grading elements which is taught in training centers to be implemented in workplaces. And this is we use in the assessments to see whether these Tibet students are compliant and conform to these standards. Next slide, please. So we have incorporated all these screening concepts and practices into the development plan, which covers mainly the traditional crafts to new technology, right, of robotic and mechatronics. And all the spectrum is covered with the greening concepts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janaka, for sharing with us the policy initiatives that are linked with the skills forecasting efforts that you are leading at TVEC. So we are 2 or 3 minutes behind time. So I will come back to you, Janaka, for the follow-up questions later. Perhaps we will move along, and I will invite Dr. Ang. He is the Senior Manager of the Integrative Built Environment Center in Singapore, Temasek Polytechnic. He is a trainer and associate faculty at the Newcastle University for the MSc program on Energy and Sustainability and accredited lead professional. So Dr. Ang will share with us the initiative that they are doing at Temasek Polytechnic, which I believe is at the heart of the Greening Tibet strategy in the Polytechnic. Dr. Ang, we invite you to please come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this conference. So in the next few minutes, I'll be walking you through on how Temasek Polytechnic curates its curriculum to better equip our graduates with lifelong learning and relevant work-ready skills. In particular, the curriculum from the Built Environment Cluster from the School of Engineering. Now, climate change is a global challenge, and Singapore is taking firm actions to do our part to build a sustainable future. Therefore, we have a whole of nation movement to advance Singapore's national agenda on sustainable movement known as the Singapore Green Plan 2030. Now, this Green Plan charts ambitious and concrete target over the next 10 years, strengthening Singapore's commitment under the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and Paris Agreement, and positioning us to achieve long-term net zero emission aspiration as soon as possible. Can we have the next slide, please? The next slide, please. Thank you. Now, so in Temasek Polytechnic, we are very aligned with the government's initiative. So sustainability at TP is supported by 4 main pillars, and they are basically the 4 C's: community, campus, collaborations, and curriculum. Now, for community itself, we have a staff-led TP Eco Campus Committee and a green interest group led by our students to help promote sustainability effort on campus and the community around our campus too. Now, Temasek Polytechnic is a campus that sits on about 30 hectares of land, and we strive to be the greenest campus in Singapore. So there are some initiatives that we have adopted, and these are basically, for example, harvesting of rainwater to irrigate plants on campus. For the new buildings constructed within the campus itself, we embrace green designs and adopt green technologies. Some of the buildings are already using solar panels to harvest energy from the sun to help offset our electricity usage, which in return reduces our carbon footprint. As for collaborations, there are also various research centers known as Centers of Excellence in Temasek Polytechnic, and they are developed in collaborations with our industry partners to tap on each other's expertise and exchange ideas on new technologies for greener buildings. Lastly, we have curriculum. There are basically 2 diplomas within the Built Environment cluster within the School of Engineering. And in the built environment field, sustainability is the keyword in the designing and building of cities in today's digital economy. Hence, with a strong conviction in mind, a dedicated team of experienced educators with their rich industry experience from various fields, ranging from engineering to architecture, curated a curriculum on designing integrated high-performance building using technologies that enable us to make buildings more sustainable and resistant to environmental degradation. This diploma is known as the Architectural Technology and Building Services. Now, as Singapore moves towards becoming a more sustainable and smart nation, we are also looking at equipping our students with the necessary multidisciplinary skill sets to become a professional who manages the integration of building systems, processes, and smart technologies to enhance the overall management of building facilities. These will be offered in the Diploma in Integrated Facility Management. Apart from curating for pre-employment trainings, we are also encouraging our adult learners to upgrade their skill sets through continuous education and training courses in the form of specialist diploma and short courses. Now, the specialist diploma in energy management and sustainable design will equip our adult learners with the knowledge of various building systems and develop competency in sustainable design concepts. So recently, we launched a regulatory course with our government agencies, National Environmental Agency, known as the Refrigerant Handling for Technician course. Now, this is the first of its kind in Singapore, and it is in line with the amendments to the Environment Protection and Management Bill passed in Singapore on the 13th of September 2021. So let me briefly share with you on how this regulatory course conceptualized using the 3 I's block shown on this slide. The 3 I's are basically identifying, integrate, and implement. In 2020, NEA, which is the National Environment Agency, shared with Temasek Polytechnic that in line with the new bill, chiller technicians has been identified, be trained and certified on how to cover and recycle the refrigerant from a chiller, which is to be decommissioned by October 2022. Now, this will be done through regulatory course, and NEA has requested Temasek Polytechnic to help roll out this course. So moving on to the next block itself, integrate. Now, knowing that this will be a regulatory course and not the usual theory course, we started to engage various stakeholders from government agencies to industry chiller manufacturers and refrigerant recovery companies for their inputs and views on the course content for this regulatory course. On the last I, implement. Having the right course without the proper facility and equipment will not lead to the desired outcome for this regulatory course. And hence, the Integrative Built Environment Center in Temasek Polytechnic has been identified as the training facility for this course, given its unique setup. Now, why is it unique? It is unique as it is equipped with an operational chiller system meant for cooling the facility, as well as for teaching purposes. And the chiller technicians will be trained in this chiller plant room to replicate the actual working environment that they will be working in future. Next slide, please. So this is an overview on the Integrative Built Environment Center in terms of the courses that we have. In short, we call it IBEC. This is one of the latest addition to the Center of Excellence in Temasek Polytechnic School of Engineering. Now, equipment ranging from security system to chiller system in these centers are all operational. And at the same time, we can use it for hands-on realistic training purposes. This is to promote a broader model of learning, which comprises a complex integration of knowledge, skills, actions, in order to carry out a task successfully in the real-life context. These will provide both our CET and PET students with a realistic learning environment. Next slide, please. Now, so these are some of the regulatory courses that we are currently offering in IBEC, from operational lift and escalator course recognized by our Building Construction Authority to the Fire Safety Manager course, jointly offered by Singapore Civil Defence Force, to the chiller plant room for training of the refrigerant handling for technician course, jointly offered by National Environment Agencies. With all these examples that we are showcasing here, in TP itself, in Temasek Polytechnic, we pride ourselves in our ability to nurture minds and ignite passions for lifelong learning. With that, I thank you for your attention. Over to you, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ang. That was indeed a very good example of a specific strategy to incorporate green skills in the curriculum. Perhaps I just have two quick follow-up questions, if you can help us elaborate a little bit. Both to Janaka and Dr. Ang, what are the lessons that we are drawing from these examples that you have shared with us? For example, Dr. Janaka shared with us labor market information-oriented policies. Do you think the institutions, the Tibet institutions in Sri Lanka, are getting the right information at the right time? And do we think the efforts we are doing is enough, or what improvements are we expecting to further provide timely information? For Dr. Ang, perhaps you can give us also some lesson in terms of how you are replicating these strategies with other potential green programs that you will be launching at Temasek Polytechnic. Janaka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ken. Actually, this is very important question whether these policies are being implemented. When the industry says that they need this kind of greening technology, how to save the energy, how to do the environment, how to apply greening concepts in the workplace, we have embed these competencies into the national competency standard, and thereby national curriculums, competency-based curriculums and assessment resources. So all these are in the curriculums which should be delivered to the students. And finally, these competencies are evaluated or checked for the compliances, and after that only they will be given the certification. So it's basically there's a process, and there's a control mechanism over the process to see whether these screening concepts are in practice. Also, when they go to the industry, there are greening concepts already being incorporated in their workshop practices and various cooperative practices, business practices. So that is going to be continued. I think there's a room for improvement for this greening concept. Still, we need a lot of effort to cover the SME sector. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Dr. Adrian, please.
All right. Okay, so to answer your question, I have two parts. One is basically for our pre-employment training, and the other is actually for our continuous educational training. Now, for the pre-employment training itself, students will basically go through a 3-year diploma program. So with that, we as educator, we need to be actually forward-looking, because eventually when students graduate, it's going to be 3 years' time. And with that, the technology, the policies, all will change at that point of time when students actually hit the workforce. So therefore, we will have to actually be forward-looking and plan ahead and make sure that whatever that we teach are actually relevant, and not just relevant, but they are something that we envision that will happen subsequently in the future. In terms of continuous educational training, we are training adult learners who are back on campus to actually upgrade their skill sets to meet the requirements of the industry. So for IBEC, which is the Integrative Built Environment Center itself, we are a center not just within the campus, but we have strong links with more than 10 industry partners as well as government agencies. And through all these links, we are able to actually get a good sense on what is the most relevant in the industry and what is required for the training of this group of adult learners. This center itself, with the strong links, will also bring back knowledge and experience to our students during their pre-employment training. So this is basically what we have learned, and we are continuously refining our approach to educate our learners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ang and Dr. Janaka. So both are representing 2 UNIVOC centers in Asia Pacific region. I will now move on to the next presentation, and I would like to invite our next panelist, Mr. Martin Stottel. I hope I pronounced it correctly. So by way of introduction, Martin is the team leader of the project that they're implementing. Before that, Martin was the head of the Swiss Economic Development Cooperation at the Embassy of Switzerland in Indonesia. And he has worked in several technical, operational, project management capacities for over 30 years in Switzerland, in Albania, and I think a significant part of that was spent in Indonesia. So Martin, of course, is very, we're very privileged to have you and to share about your experience implementing the project in Indonesia. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you very much for that opportunity, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody wherever you are sitting at the very moment. The project I'm talking about is financed by the government of Switzerland and is implemented in cooperation with 3 Indonesian ministries: the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, the Ministry of Education and Culture, as well as the Ministry of Manpower. Its name, as the name hints, the project is focusing on skills development of human resources, particularly in the renewable energy subsector. Next slide, please. Let me give you a little background first. Indonesia has very ambitious targets that defined at the international stage. 23% renewable energy in the energy mix by 2025 and 41% emission reduction by 2030. That in case Indonesia is being supported by the international community. Otherwise, the reduction would be smaller. These are aggressive targets which will not be easy to achieve, considering that in 2020, the mix was consisting of 50% coal-fired power plants, 29% gas, 6% of the energy was produced by diesel generators, and only 15% so far by renewables. There are some preconditions to be successful in that energy transition. Besides a conducive regulatory environment which enhances the private sector investment, the availability of well-skilled and qualified human resources will be essential for the success. The project would like to contribute to achieving these ambitious targets by enabling competent design, planning, installation, operation and maintenance of renewable energy power plants in Indonesia through making qualified staff relevant to the labor market needs available. The expected results, in short, of our project are that 4 polytechnics are offering one-year diploma specialization programs in renewable energy. 2 students from a variety of engineering backgrounds. Starting 2023, 150 students shall graduate at IQF level 6, which is the equivalent of a Bachelor of Applied Science. 4 training providers shall offer modular short courses. Then starting in 22, the training providers shall release 80 graduates annually at IQF level 3 or 4. And in addition, we expect that at least 10% of the lessons taught in diploma specialization programs and the short courses shall be conducted by guest experts from the industry. Next slide, please. To define the focus of the first phase of the project lasting until mid-25, we looked at which subsectors have the biggest skills demand for the next 3 to 4 years and which ones are most urgent. As a result, we decided to start with solar PV, hydropower, and hybrid solar PV diesel generator systems. In the second phase, from mid-25 to end 28, the project will most probably address biomass as an additional source of renewable energy. Geothermal energy was purposely excluded, as Switzerland has not much experience in the field of geothermal energy. Consequently, the project is working on linking selected training providers to the government of New Zealand, as there is significant more experience in geothermal energy in New Zealand than in Switzerland. The project will not be able to cover the complete skills demand. The REST project is intending to develop a meaningful pilot to show an example of good practice, basing on which the government and private sector should be able to upscale to achieve the final needs. Next slide, please. The project positions itself within the existing Indonesian formal and non-formal education structure and is aiming at a systemic approach by assisting the development of the so-called D4 courses at IQF level 6, graduating with the bachelor degree in applied science and training the future engineers. And then we have the short courses at IQF level 3 and 4, training the future operation and maintenance personnel. With the project approach, integration and ownership among the Indonesian partners are intended to be created from the very start of the project. The REST project shall not be a Swiss project, but an Indonesian one, as not to create later the need to integrate something artificial into the Indonesian existing country systems, but from the outset create something which fits within to those systems. The core project is assisting the partnering schools and ministries, mainly in curriculum development, in teachers training, in technical as well as methodic and didactic subjects, in teaching material development, equipment investment and training, in the use of the equipment, in standards definition and certification, in industrial relations like cooperation in curriculum development, internships, industry representatives teaching at the selected sessions, and job placement. Next slide, please. At the strategic level, the project is working with multiple government partners. Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources as the core partner, then the Ministry of Education and Culture, which is overseeing polytechnic education, and the Ministry of Manpower, which is offering professional training in form of short courses for reskilling or retraining of existing workforce, as well as for high school graduates without experience. High school graduates are, however, the majority of their participants. The BNSP, the National Professional Certification Body, the project cooperates with that body in terms of standards definition and certification. Then WAPNAS, the National Planning Ministry, the cooperation there is mainly in the relation to the fact that WAPNAS is in charge of allocating resources to ministries, as the equipment investment is split 50-50 between the government and the project. So it is essential to work with WAPNAS as well. The project's implementing partners are 10 training institutions and that relate to private sector in solar and hydropower, as well as the sector associations. The Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources owns 2 of those schools. One is a polytechnic and one is a training provider for short courses. Then the Ministry of Education and Culture has 4 of those polytechnics we are working with, and 4 training providers of short courses are belonging to the Ministry of Manpower. Next slide, please. That brings me to the end of the short summary of our RES project here in Indonesia. It has only just started 9 months ago, and we don't have the opportunity to talk much about lessons learned yet. But if we have another session in 2-3 years, we might be able to talk about that. I would like to thank you very much for your attention and give back to Kenneth.
Thanks a lot, Martin. That was really a very interesting showcase of how a very comprehensive strategy by the government is leveraging on the opportunity to develop the polytechnic education system in Indonesia, which I think many of you know is very important aspect in the country, because they really are responsible for preparing the workforce for the many industries in the country. Maybe not much on the lesson, but maybe what strikes me the most is the level of cooperation, how spread out your project is. And of course, that requires you to be working with a lot of different types of institutions. You have mentioned the training providers for the non-formal education and also the formal education being the polytechnics. Perhaps you can describe it as how enthusiastic these polytechnics and training providers are in working in this project. We don't have to measure, of course, the level of interest. We know it's a very important initiative, but how do you feel is their approach? Is it reflecting a very a long-term engagement to the project from how you see with the partners that you're working with?
Thank you, Kenneth. Maybe just to your last question about the long-term engagement, that the government of Switzerland typically is investing quite into longer-term projects. So the project is designed already from the outset for a duration of 8 years. Now, talking about enthusiasm of our training providers, when you look at the polytechnics, for many of them, it is actually an opportunity to upgrade 3 years diploma programs to a 4 years diploma program by adding a final year, a 4th year of 2 semesters, specializing in the particular sector of renewable energy. Now that makes their school as such a lot more attractive, because a D4 program in Indonesia is an equivalent to a bachelor's degree, so Bachelor of Applied Science, and that is typically what people are looking for to send their children to attend a program which is ending with a bachelor's degree. So for the polytechnics themselves, that is very attractive as an upgrading not only one program, but being able to upgrade at the same time various programs, because the intake is taken from these 3 graduates from various engineering programs by specializing them on renewable energy. Whereas with the short courses, I cannot really say so much yet about. We have not had a course yet. The first impression of cooperation with those training providers of the Ministry of Manpower is extremely positive. People are very motivated. There are as well some of the schools, they can significantly enlarge their portfolio of courses being offered, and that makes their institution more attractive and is very much welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. That was really great additional information. So I would like to thank all our three presenters. I now give the floor back to Robert, who will help us facilitate the question and answer. Robert, please. Your microphone is off.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, our four panelists, for your excellent presentation and sharing your experiences. And we will now ask a few questions. Given the essence of time, I will, I think, read out the questions, and then you can pick whichever you think is appropriate for you to answer. So and I think I will also add one or two of my questions in addition to what we have already prepared to ask you. So the first general question to all the panelists: do you think the skills need to become successful in these projects are being met so far? Second question: what extent of retraining or reskilling of skilled workers are needed? Third, how do you determine the responsibilities between your institutions and your partners? Fourth question: what lessons have you drawn from the experience you have in the project, you have acquired from the project, which can help similar efforts to engage with partners for green skills and TVET? Fifth, I think it's very important because of building a resilient TVET system in the context of COVID-19 and in the context of the projects that you have implemented and also the systems that you're part of. How have you responded to COVID-19 response? The last one, I think, is on the, from your experience, to what extent do you think that the institutional culture of greening TVET or green skills has now taken root inside these institutions from your experience and from your engagement with partners as well? So thank you for those questions. We will now ask, firstly, Ricardo, to start off with your responses to those general questions, very quickly.
Thank you, Robert. And I'm not. Let me say one point. We are lacking at the international level. We are lacking a definition of what a green job is, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't know whether we will ever achieve let's say a definition of that. And let me say, I'm not even sure whether we should invest too much time on that. I mean, to have a harmonized definition of that, because we have to understand before going into the definition, and work with the words, that those technologies, looking into better use of resources, are going to impact our daily life in future, and in particular, not only our jobs and the future of jobs, but our daily life. And let me say, that is going to, it was very clear from the different, let's say, contributions from today. Those technologies are going to impact at different levels. Those that were before blue collar, white collar, maybe tomorrow will be green collar, right? I mean, at the university level. I don't know, I've never heard about the green collar definition, but maybe it could be a good outcome from this session, to call them those engineers and highly educated people on greener technologies, but down to technicians and even end users in the end. So we are talking about sometimes new ways of designing cooking stoves, right, for rural people during using pyrolysis, for instance. I mean, let's leave it outside, but those technologies are going to impact our daily life. And going into your element on whether we have to which extent to expand, the technical skills development and the fragility of some of the categories, we have to consider that people, not only youth and women, will have to be very well educated and be equipped, with skilled for their future, but also, let's say, people in the job currently, individuals and also companies. I'm talking about SMEs, for instance, which have different access to resources for reskilling, upskilling. Those should be protected. And just to say on that, I think, partnering at global level is the only solution to be meaningful in the offers we may provide or we may design. I'm talking about definitely WorldSkills International is a great player on that. No, it's a global, but of course UNESCO, ILO, UNIDO, all those universities, entities, governmental entities. So. That is going to be extremely necessary for the future. I'm not sure, Robert, whether I managed to answer any of your questions, but over back to you.
Thank you. I think I wanted, you see, the TVET and skills policy is one of the main areas that UNESCO and ILO we address, and I think we need to get a very quick feedback from Janaka. You were emphasizing or highlighting on the green skills policy. Please highlight to what extent have you revised the policy or a new policy was developed, and also you have to highlight whether you have consulted environment sector, agriculture sector, energy sector, etc. Because you see, from our experience, TVET policies are purely designed by ministries of education, excluding the other stakeholders. And given the new momentum now on green skills, green economy, etc., we need to really revise and upgrade the TVET policies. Sanaka, please.
Thank you, Robert. I think that is very timely question, because we have, as the policy making and regulatory body for TVET in Sri Lanka, with the support of National Education Commission, which is the regulatory and policy-making body for the general education, we have both come together and developed a separate policy for TVET. So greening is a very much a concern during this development process, and how to institutionalize the promotion and environmental friendly and sustainable development goals into the policy was taken into consideration when developing the policy, and how to establish a reliable, sustainable teacher education, which is very important. That has been given a lot of importance during the policy development. And protection and the rights of the persons with disabilities, and how they are, how we incorporate their skills into these sectors in the different segments, and to have an inclusive, sustainable development. As well as when we talk about this, we need reskilling and upskilling of some of the teachers and various other industry persons for the greening skills. And we have two kinds of programs. One is there's an ozone layer protection authority, and they have come to us to develop a separate vocational education training plan for FNAC sector. And that is the latest initiative that we have been working with them as the policy for the separate this FNAC sector. Also, yes.
Yeah, wrap it up now.
Okay, thank you. I think those are some of the examples that we have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question, Ken, if you can allow me. There's a question from Albania to Martin, our speaker from Indonesia. The question is, of the private sector involvement in the project, how active was it, and which does this cooperation constitute of or comprise of, I think? Martin?
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello from Indonesia to Albania. Hi, Anna. It's a while since we have been working together there. But as a matter of principle, what we are doing in Indonesia is starting the private sector cooperation in the obvious first step, which is the curriculum development. So curriculum development using the DECOM approach, starting with defining the profile of a future graduate together with the private sector, and only then going back to the school and starting to turn that into a curriculum, reflecting that again with the private sector, and seeing if that fits now with their needs, probably revising where necessary. Then we have cooperation in terms of internship. Our students, the one-year students, they will attend a 3 months internship in the private sector. Then we have that cooperation of inviting private sector representatives to teach at the school selected subjects. Then we are cooperating with the private sector when it comes to job placement activities. So you see there is a whole variety of different approaches which are varying quite a bit, but I think the essential one is the definition of a curriculum together with the private sector. So the school actually produces a graduate which is really in line with the needs of the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you. I now end the floor to Ken, please.
Thanks, Robert, for facilitating our question and answer. So to our audience, please allow us to go a little bit over time. We may finish a little bit after 12:30 in Bonn time. So I will now invite our discussant, Father Brian Butanas from the Don Bosco Technical Vocational Education Center in the Philippines for his reflections. He is going to share with us a different type of cooperation, partnership, and engagement. Father Butanas, please, the floor is yours for 4 minutes.
Thank you for this opportunity to render the reflection, the presentations. Of course, Mr. Ricardo presented the trends in business restructuring, impacting skills and jobs reach potentials, addressing the challenges and of introducing propane-based air conditioners into the market and with its standards and skilled technicians. It's a curriculum based on industry demand. Also, Sir Janaka shared on modeling multi-stakeholder engagement to enact a policy and forecasting labor market needs for greening vocational training in energy and construction sectors, aligning existing jobs with green competencies. Dr. Adrian Ang also speaks of a specialist diploma for technicians on refrigerant handling, giving also an overview of the Integrative Built Environment Center for lifelong relevant learning. Mr. Martin delivered a report on a renewable energy skills development project for polytechnics and training providers in Indonesia, connecting private sector with employers association and sector association. Well, here in the Philippines, along with 18 Don Bosco TVET centers, we envision that we become a benchmark and premier provider of technical vocational education founded on the teachings of St. John Bosco. Our missions are to form students in the Salesian educational system, making them good Christians and honest, upright citizens, and to develop and train students who are highly qualified and globally competitive, and to provide quality technical education to the poor and underprivileged youth for gainful employment. The desire to integrate a green TVET center with the current welding program, technology program, directed us also to venture into bamboo production as its benefits to climate change and impact to local environment and also its value chain. So we partnered with the Kabili Nature Farm and Bamboo Center with Father Vic Labao as our main resource for lectures and workshops with our trainers, faculty, and staff. All these programs are geared towards to enhance the capability of the center and to develop the training programs based on the training regulations set by the government or the TESDA. Significant also partnership is with the Junior Chamber International, the Metro Cebu Uptown, which guarantees continued networking with their partners, companies, and particularly in the construction and poultry sector, thus assuring that the deserving young people employed and equipped with proper knowledge, skills, and attitudes aligned to their industry and also to their advocacy. Enrollment of the trainees as to high probability of employment. The secret we wanted to share is it's values-driven, multi-skilled, and environmentally responsible individuals. This gave our TVET trainees sustainable employment despite the challenging times of the pandemic. The TVET Center originally intended to support the needs of the shipbuilding industry, mainly on welding. The pandemic has affected the industry, diminishing the demand for potential employment. Well, despite the setback, we saw an opportunity in the booming construction industry because of the Build program of the Philippine government. Fortunately, prior to the pandemic, we were able to establish linkages with construction companies and various poultry farms to provide their employment needs that the shipbuilding industry has left us in void. So with this gained knowledge and also strengthened partnerships, the center, we came up with 3 batches, all integrated the bundled content program on construction building, which consists of welding as their foundational skill with basic electricity, masonry, carpentry, and scaffolding erection. Next slide, please. Besides the content-based discussion on these topics, all trainees perform hands-on work on the bamboo nursery, doing plant rehabilitation, nursery preparation on propagules, maintaining nursery stocks, plant bamboo stocks, and also harvesting and other operations related to bamboo. Looking ahead, the TVET Center proposes an expansion of the training program, not only to their existing workers, but also to the trainees. Similarly, a training will also include welding, electrical, and masonry and scaffolding, and bamboo production. This will allow us to be more sustainable, and will also we know that a green worker is more employable worker, and this we were able to see it with the 3 batches that we had. And a green workforce will enhance the profitability also of our partners, which our last slide would show also. Last slide, please. This is our proposal of our program, that a worker who works for the environment with construction and related skills that is needed for the jobs. Thank you so much for this presentation.
Thank you so much, Father Botanas, for sharing with us how you are trying to manage the challenges of the pandemic, but also at the same time make sure that your TVET programs are still trying to respond with the sectors or subsectors that are actually offering jobs at the community level, and how you are trying to work with these different actors, stakeholders, and companies that are willing to support your mission. So I think at this point, it has been really a very enriching and a fruitful sharing of the experiences. If you have perhaps any question to Father Butanas, if you want to know more, of course, you can always contact him. We will provide and share with you all the contact information of our panelists. I will now share with Robert again, our co-moderator, in case you have any final questions, Robert, before we move to close the session.
Thank you. I think one of the, all of you, the presenters, panelists have highlighted the alignment issue from your policy, from at institution level and at the ministry level, from Janaka, to alignment with the national strategy and medium and long-term plans on sustainable development. I think that is a very important aspect with the UN system of monitoring the alignment of the green skills, TVET, employment, unemployment, a whole range of related issues aligned with the national sustainable development agenda. So if one of you could really highlight, maybe Janaka or Martin could highlight this important aspect of it.
Martin, you can go.
That's not really my level of where I fly.
Yes.
I am rather at the institutional level than at the political one. Probably that would be the better one for you.
Okay, thank you. Actually, when it comes to the policy level, we have to consider the stakeholder views and the implementability and what are the ecosystem concerns when we are going to go with this kind of plan. And also considering the stakeholder views, so some of the concerns of implementing such plans at the ground level has to be considered at the policy level, because if we do the policy right, but if we cannot implement, there's an issue. Because of that, we need to bring all the stakeholders on table and see what is the feasible solution for particular issues at various levels. So that was the exercise that we have done for the policy development, because in the main policy we have greening elements embedded in our policy directives. So I think, did I answer your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you. Ken?
Yes. Thank you so much, Robert, and all our colleagues. So at this point, our WorldSkills colleagues mentioned that we need to take a photo before we close the session. So I will invite everyone to please make sure your videos are on. Our colleagues will put a gallery mode to the Zoom so we can see everyone. And while we do that, I would like to thank everyone for all their contributions. This is not the last conversation that we will have. I'm very sure about that. And we will perhaps revisit 1-2 years from now how your projects, initiatives have progressed, and see what we can further share with each other and learn or draw from the experiences that you have implemented. So in Singapore, it's really good to see the program at the heart of this greening strategy, and we hope that your IBEC the work of the IBEC, the Build Center, will really be a success, so that we can also further showcase this with other UNIVOC centers in the region. The Janaka has always been part of our community and always active in and supportive of our UNESCO Tibet strategy. So we hope to also be able to learn more from the experiences in Sri Lanka. Our colleague from the Philippines, he is currently implementing, or the Tibet, the Don Bosco College is implementing projects that is also going to be supported by the ILO in the Philippines. And we really look forward to see how the greening of Don Bosco Tibet centers will become a success, and we further want to share the experiences and learn from that. Do we have the gallery view? All right, so okay, let's smile and all right. I hope our colleagues at WorldSkills International have done their job there. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So at this point, we just have to say maybe one word from Ricardo and one from Robert, and we are gonna close this session. Ricardo, please.
Thank you, Ken. I just would like to, usually when we have these virtual meetings, we say it's not really what counts the meeting itself, but the journey going into the meeting, right? I mean, because we always have technical issues. I mean, this time we didn't have any technical issues, but still the journey that brought us today here was really interesting. And thank you, Ken, because you handle the coordination also with our host, the WorldSkills International, very professionally. And Ken, has been really a pleasure. So looking forward to cooperating in future again.
Thank you, Ricardo. Pleasure working with you and the team. Robert?
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, WorldSkills. Thank you, UNIDO, and thank you all our panelists for your presentation. And I really enjoyed the session today. And I hope to see you again in the next foreseeable future in one of the green skills discussions again. And as we know, green skills is a theme or work in progress. So we need to continue to discuss, find solutions, looking at partnerships, and continue to build a very strong foundation. And as we said, you're coming from institute, you need to build a very strong institutional culture for greening skills. And as we say in TVET and UNESCO, greening the campus, greening the curriculum and training, greening research, greening the community and workplace, and greening institutional culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robert. And all the best for the work you are doing in our Beijing cluster office. So you are also working with a lot of countries in that part of the world. So all the best. And all the best to our colleagues, Martin, Father Brian, Dr. Adrian, Ricardo, and Janaka. Thanks a lot. And thanks to WorldSkills International, Judith, for all these opportunities that you have given us. And thanks to all our participants for your time and for joining us learn about all these experts that we have in the session.
Thank you, Janaka. Thank you, Ricardo, Brian, Martin, bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Janaka, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Ken. Bye.